And away we go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Wherever you happen to be in the world today, welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what's going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you're listening anywhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, and Rumble, Coffee Talk 2. I wish they could all be named the same thing, but you know how it is. As we get ready to jump off here, naturally, I do read through as many comments as is plausible. And I'll go ahead and say hello to some of the people that are joining us so far in the live portion. I see Jimmy is here, as well as Jeff, Armored, Brian, Helter, Dragon, Monkey, Flukeman, John. Glad you all could make it today. That was Granny Smith, by the way, who's keeping me company. I was just showing Granny Smith there. Brian says he actually got a notification. No kidding. That's a miracle. Again, ScrewTube treats me pretty badly, and I know a lot of people don't get notifications. It is what it is. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Raccoon is joining us. And hello to everyone else who is listening and chooses not to or is not able to chime in. You're appreciated anyways. Naturally, we will be talking about China and tariffs today, or tariffs, depending upon your pronunciation, potato, zebra, zebra. What's the difference? But before that, I wanted to talk about some corruption. I wanted to talk about more government corruption. And Raccoon confirms that, says no notification, I bet. Nature Nerd says dollars being devalued to the point of €1 being $1.15. It goes up and down all the time, though. I wouldn't worry about it too much yet. But this is something I've long suspected, and I wanted to share this. We're going to jump to a Newsweek article talking about fraud at the Lottery Commission. So, lottery chief resigns after the biggest theft in the history of Texas. Okay. Ryan Mindell announced his resignation as executive director of the Texas Lottery Commission on Monday. Oh, hold on a second. I really hate that. On Monday, after the state-funded body was engulfed in a series of scandals. And this is yesterday, Monday the 22nd. No, Monday the 21st, excuse me, not yesterday, the day before. In 2023, a single buyer purchased 25.8 million $1 Texas lottery tickets, nearly all there were, in order to secure a $95 million jackpot in what Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick called the biggest theft from the people of Texas in the history of Texas. That's pretty brilliant. In recent years, the Texas Lottery has become embroiled in a number of scandals and is currently under investigation by the Texas Attorney General Office and the Texas Rangers from the Department of Public Safety. On Monday, in a statement, Texas Lottery Commissioner Chairman Robert G. Rivera said that Mindell had notified the Texas Lottery Commission Board of his resignation effective today. Mindell served as executive director for exactly 1 year following the resignation of his longstanding predecessor, Gary Grief. He previously worked as deputy executive director, operations director, and assistant general counsel for the Texas Lottery. In 2023, wow, this is really bouncing around today. I hate that. In 2023, a $95 million jackpot was won by a consortium led by London-based trader Bernard Maritelli, which purchased nearly all of the 25.8 million possible number combinations at $1 per ticket. According to the Wall Street Journal, Marantelli and his associates obtained official ticket printing terminals, which they operated around the clock to produce the requisite tickets. Lieutenant Governor Patrick described their win as the biggest theft from the people of Texas in the history of Texas. Through Martinelli's legal representative, though Martinelli's legal representative insisted that all applicable laws, rules, and regulations were followed. The Texas Lottery has also been criticized over the operation of ticket counter services, third-party companies that sell game tickets through smartphone apps. In March 2025, one woman who said she had an $83.5 million winning lottery jackpot ticket was told she wouldn't receive any money until the completion of separate investigations led by the Attorney General and the Texas Rangers. It emerged her ticket had been purchased via an online courier app on her phone. Following criticism, the TLC changed its rules to ban bulk purchases from professional gamblers along with courier companies. The Texas Lottery, which was launched in 1992 with approval from the state legislature, says it's generated over $40 billion for the state government, with $34 billion of that going to the Foundation School Fund, which supports public education in Texas, with funding also going to the Texas Veterans Commission Fund for Veterans Assistance, according to Texas Lottery. And I bet their public schools still suck. Despite that, I bet they still suck. Nature Nerd says UK has no taxes for lottery winners. Why can't a state or the US or the federal level do that too? Some states there are no taxes for the lottery, and some it's like an immense amount of taxes. Like California, the taxes on California lottery is insane, I think. But it depends on what state you're in. JJ's here, also no notification. Wow. Raccoon says, I didn't know there was a limit on how many tickets you could buy. Texas is setting a limit because a gambling consortium again from overseas basically ripped them off or got over on them. So technically it wasn't illegal, although the lottery commissioner is calling it a theft. It's not really a theft. Someone worked the system, basically. Someone figured out how to work that system, spent $28 million to purchase every possible combination on a certain ticket, and then earned $95 million out of it, minus whatever they would have to pay in taxes. And Texas is like, no, we can't let that continue to happen. That reminds me of a story from somewhere in New England. I forget which part of New England it was. I think it might be New Hampshire. Something like that was figured out. A guy and his wife had discovered that a certain lottery numbers game could be rigged the same way, and they invested something like $2 million of their own personal money into buying a round of tickets and ended up like tripling their money. And the lottery commission figured out what they did and put an end to it. Imagine says in Australia, the taxes are handled by the lottery company, so the winners never have to deal with it. That's convenient. And Peter says no taxes in New Zealand, or lottery, that is. And the United States, they do. And it depends on the state. There's always federal on winnings, but it depends on what state you're in, whether or not you have to pay state taxes. And some states are nuts with it. You'll pay a city and a county tax as well. So they really gouge you, and you could end up losing up to 50% of the ticket if your state does all of that. Yeah, that's what Fluke Man's asking. I don't know if you get 100% of Texas lottery. I don't know if you get it all. I don't know how the taxes work there. And Monkey said the person used math to solve the problem, getting the correct numbers using statistics, so calculating the number of possible numbers and bought the amount to gain profit, assuming taxes don't take a chunk of it. Yeah, it's kind of like in blackjack. It's not illegal to count cards if you're capable of it. Some people, I mean, it's a skill. It's a skill, but there are people who can sit there and play blackjack and count cards. But the casino doesn't have to let you play. And if they figure out you're counting cards, they can bar you from playing blackjack in that casino. Tell you, thank you, sir, but please go somewhere else. Go play the slots or roulette or something. You're no longer allowed to play blackjack here. T. Kane says, yeah, all gambling winnings are tax-free in Australia. Okay. And Peter said there used to be a TV show in the 90s about lottery winners. It was pure propaganda. Most people don't do well with big lottery wins because they're bad stewards of their money in the first place. Bad stewards of their money to begin with. Oh, and Fluke Man, following up on something from the other day. It's not that it specifically says Friday in the Bible. It says Sabbath day, which is the seventh day, which when you take that calendar and superimpose it over our modern calendar, lands on Friday. Because in the Jewish culture, in the Hebrew culture, in the time of the Bible, and actually even today, because they keep a separate calendar, they only have a name for one day of the week, which is the seventh day, which is the Sabbath day. The rest of the week has a numeric value, not a name. So it's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's day 1, day 2, day 3 or Monday wouldn't be day 3, day 1. Actually, Saturday would be day 1. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, day 1, 2, and 3, until you get to what we call Friday. And then that is the Sabbath day, the seventh day, which is where the Seventh-day Adventists get their name from. So, yeah, when you take their calendar and superimpose it on our modern calendar, their Sabbath day in order lands on our Friday. So, yeah, you won't see the name Friday in the Bible, or you shouldn't. And that's what I had forgotten about, so I couldn't explain it properly. And I talked to my wife, and she was like, "No, remember, they don't say the name. They don't have names." I'm like, "Oh, duh, that's right. It's numbers." If that, going back to that other question. JJ says U.S. tax code is confusing at times. What with several government entities vying to steal your money, that it's about as pleasant as having a yard rake shoved up your butt. Yeah, pretty much. And Armin says, I thought casinos became wise to card counting a long time ago, and now they play the game differently, so it doesn't work. Basically, all they can do is add decks of cards. But there's only so many decks of cards you can put in the shoe before it screws the game up. And I think it's like 6 decks are mixed in there. But there are people that they're good enough at math that they can calculate that in their heads and still count cards. There are people that can do it. I'm not one of them. I wish I was, because I'd make just enough before they threw me out of the casino and just retire. But and a lot of times it's because those people, when they figured out they have the skill, get greedy and they go to the well one too many times. And then the casino was like, hey, we're going to have to ask you to not play this anymore. And they have a right to do that. They have a right to do that, but it's not illegal to count the cards. So here we go, getting into China now. And this is Tag 24 News, because China is starting to fold. He says China opens door to negotiations after Trump suggests de-escalating their trade war. Trump basically, he's made it clear, hey, I'll back off if you do. I'll back off if you do. I'll meet you in the middle. So here we go. China has indicated it will open the door to negotiations after Trump as well as the U.S. Treasury chief on Tuesday, said they expect a de-escalation of their trade war. And China's actually in more trouble than I thought, and something I hadn't thought about, really. I hadn't thought about, and I'm going to get into that a little later, that China is in more trouble with this than I originally thought. So here we go. Trump on Tuesday said 145% tariffs on China were very high, and added the number will come down substantially, but it won't be zero. Ultimately, they have to make a deal because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States, Trump told reporters at the White House. China was taking us for a ride, and it's just not going to happen. We're going to be very good to China. I have a great relationship with President Xi, he claimed, but they're going to do very well. I think they'll be happy. Trump's comments were reflected by U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who on Tuesday said the tariff regime was equivalent to a reciprocal trade embargo that is unsustainable. Bessent said Beijing needs to rebalance its economy and stressed the U.S. does not want to totally decouple from China. Instead, he expects China imports tariffs to come down substantially and the trade war to de-escalate. Seemingly in response to components from Trump and Bessent, China's foreign ministry indicated it was willing to begin negotiation with Washington and said its doors were wide open for trade talks. Basically, they saw that Trump didn't back down. When they raised their tariffs, he just raised his, while he suspended it for everyone else to negotiate. Now China wants to negotiate because Trump tested the water with an olive branch. I'm willing to de-escalate if you are. Let's talk. Now China wants to talk all of a sudden. China had previously responded to Trump's trade war with 125% tariffs on imports from the U.S., as well as steep curves on the trade of agricultural goods. And you're wondering what is exactly sent from the United States to China. You'd be surprised, and we're going to get into that. That's what I forgot about, that I read an article about it this morning, and I was like, holy shit, that's right. We really got China by the coconuts, actually, and not just because they sell us so much of their cheaply made garbage, all of that plastic shit that they make, that probably almost all of it goes to us or Europe. We really kind of got them in a bad spot with the whole tariff deal, more than even that. Article also reads, China pointed out early on that there are no winners in tariff wars. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Gao Zhaikun told reporters on Wednesday when Trump dropped all of those tariffs in the first place. Everyone else called the White House and said, hey, can we work this out? China raised their tariffs to try to be snarky and save face, which fits with their culture, quite frankly. It fits with their culture. And we've been down this road with China before. We were down this road with China when Trump was president the first time and didn't want to take their shit. Peter says U.S. walks away from Ukraine deal. I saw that coming. That doesn't surprise me. Is that breaking news? Is that breaking news? That because the trade deals were going badly, and people have just kind of forgotten about the UK also. Have you noticed that? They haven't really even been in the news the last couple of weeks. Hasn't been in the news for the last couple of weeks. Tuck says years ago, government of Florida sold the lottery on the promise that the proceeds would go directly into the education system. That's what every state says. We're going to use it for the Department of, we're going to use it for public schools. We're going to use it to fix roads. And everywhere you see potholes and you see schools with really dumb kids. Okay. It's really, it's like, why bother? Flukeman said China justifies their intellectual steal by saying the US, UK, and Japan and etc. invaded and stole from China many, many decades ago, but fails to mention they steal from countries who never stole from China. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they look at how they behaved in their cultural revolutions. I think it's fascinating that they had a prodigy pianist at the Beijing Olympics that they showcased, a Chinese pianist, when 50 years ago, a pianist would have been imprisoned and his piano impounded. Watch the movie The Red Violin. Actually showcases that rather nicely. When they had their cultural revolution, anyone who played a Western instrument was imprisoned. Western ideals were attacked that prominently. The Red Violin, good movie. Good movie, very interesting. I don't know if anyone has ever seen it. But yeah, now all of a sudden, China wants to negotiate. But as I had pointed out, China was in a lot more trouble than I had at first thought. Again, they had two choices. In my mind, they had two choices. Okay, they can negotiate, lower their prices, or stay where they are, and all of that factory work will go somewhere else. Someone else will do it. Asia is full of really cheap factories. Taiwan will do it. Singapore will do it. Bangladesh will do it. Vietnam. Pick your country. They'll all be happy to do it. They'll all be happy to. And Dilo is joining us. They'd be happy to do it. They'd be happy to take that business from China, or it could come back to the United States. Some manufacturing is coming back here. We've already seen it, especially in the automotive industry and the computer tech industry. That's their alternative. You either play ball or the factories go somewhere else. But then there's the issue of, well, exactly what does the United States import to China? And this is something I hadn't thought about. Okay. There's something that's manufactured in the United States that apparently is not made anywhere else in the world. And China needs almost all of it. Seriously. So, and Trump and Dilo says, thumbs up. Please do, ladies and gentlemen. Thumbs up. I'll take all the thumbs up I can get. Please share. Please help the channel grow. China needs all of it in order to continue to manufacture it. And they're our biggest customer. And Trump shut them off. I forgot all about this. Cut them off during his first administration to force them to deal. And they folded. So here, this is a Western Journal article. China plastics industry faces a reckoning as world realizes it depends on critical U.S. exports. For the most part, the story of the tariff war between China and the United States has been that by ratcheting up tariffs, China has far more to lose because it imports much less from the United States than the U.S. does from China. And this is generally true, but the tale of woe befalling China's plastics industry shows that a slowdown in U.S. imports could put a major dent in their export trade as well. Remember, almost everything China manufactures is made from plastic, right? According to the Singapore Business Times, plastic factories across China will come to a halt, which is the world's dominant plastics manufacturer, which again is China, is now forced to go without critical ingredients in production, which it mostly gets from the United States. On Monday, Bloomberg noted China's purchases of liquefied natural gas dropped to zero in March, and the imports were frozen before the tariffs even kicked in. Overall delivery of U.S. LNG, okay, and that is liquefied natural gases, shipments in the first quarter of 2025 fell 70%, according to Chinese data released Sunday, since the war triggered U.S. President Trump's first go China to knuckle under to Trump the first time. There's that stuff. And China needs it to produce plastic. They don't manufacture it themselves, which is outrageous. I'm kind of shocked that they don't. If we cut them off, they can't make any plastic. If they can't make plastic, there goes about 80 to 90% of their manufacturing. They're really screwed. They are really, really screwed. JJ reiterates here on the previous comment. What the state of Florida didn't tell people is that even though the lottery money did go to education, other sources of education funds were rerouted to other things after the lotto money started. Interesting. Flukeman suggests he hopes Trump will screw the tariffs and just move their factories to the U.S. or anywhere outside of China. China will be buried. Nature Nerd says J.D. Vance is making a trade deal with India, which will hurt China's export economy a lot once jobs switch over to there. Yeah, like I said, there's plenty of countries that would be happy to take to knock China down a peg. They'll even take a cut. They'll offer a better deal. Nature Nerd says U.S. should have no problem creating cheap plastic if the ingredients are from the U.S. Remember when plastic was indescribable in before the 2000s. Raccoon says, what? Give me no more Hot Toys figures. Yeah, Hot Toys action figures. Peter suggests stopping plastics not a bad thing. Micro nanoplastics in everyone's brains. Yeah, the plastic is everywhere. It's infested everything. Again, you recall, many of you have probably seen the independent video that I did talking about plastics recycling, and basically how the governments of the world and the industries have been lying to the people for the last 50 plus years about plastic recycling, because almost all plastic cannot be recycled. It all ends up in landfill. It gets shredded, excuse me, it gets shredded and it gets put in landfills, which seeps. I don't care how secure those landfills are, they seep. It's in everything now. It's in everything now. If it's going to undermine the human species, it's already too late. It's already too late to fix it. It's already too late to fix it. It would take generations to fix. It would take generations to get it out of our system, or for it to sink low enough, because you know things sink through the earth as the earth cleanses itself. Even radiation eventually sinks low enough that it goes into the bowels of the earth. But it would take generations for the plastic to sink out of our lives if we totally stopped production tomorrow. But they've lied to us for 50 years about it being safe, and it isn't. And that's what my video was about. And I get that information right from the EPA and their landfill statistics. Why does so much plastic end up in landfills? Because you can't recycle it. Most of it can't be. And these recycling plants have been living off of government subsidies for 50 years. More than 50 years, like 51, 52 years. They've been living off government subsidies while they shred the plastic and leave it in landfills and basically pretend to recycle. They recycle less than anywhere from 2 to 5% of what they get. Peter says that video is on this channel. Yes, that video is on this channel. It's an independent video I did talking about plastic. Let me see if I can find the link for it. And you know how it is. Nobody sees my videos. And that's a very important one. The one I did on plastic and the one that I did on what was the other one that was really big? On energy production, on how, and I use the government's own web pages to demonstrate how the windmills and solar panels are basically useless. Let me see if I can find it for you. Here it is. Hold on, I'll put the link on there for you so that you can find it. Because yeah, nobody sees this stuff. Nobody sees this stuff. My videos don't circulate. ScrewTube hates my guts. That's the link for the plastic video. Here it comes. Okay. And the other one, see if I can find it. See if I can find the right one. That's electric vehicles. Electric vehicles. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. Oh, here it is. I think this is it. Clean energy scam. Hold on a second. I'll put it up too. This is the link about how solar and wind farms are worthless, producing almost nothing on our grid, even though there's thousands of plants, literally thousands. There's like 3,000 solar and wind farms producing next to nothing, and they live off of government subsidies because they don't produce enough power to warrant their operation. They don't produce enough power. And Nature Nerd, yeah, that's correct. He says Norway incinerates the plastic, which would be better. Which would be better. Tuck says, after learning about subsidies for recycling corporations, I was pretty irked when they'd get news outlets to guilt people into washing all the plastic or take the caps off. Yeah, we've been scammed into believing that we're helping the planet by recycling the plastic, and the plastic's killing the planet. And then they can't recycle that shit anyways. Almost all of it, like seriously, 95-98% of it from the recycling plants, all they do is shred it, bag it, and send it to landfill. It's destroying us. It's destroying us. Nature Nerd wants to know if landfills will be mined in the future for minerals and compounds. It would be a good idea. It would be a good idea because think about you'd be surprised, and I think it's mentioned in that video on the clean energy scam, how much of that landfill is actually food waste. A huge percentage is food waste. Instead of recycling that, that could be composted back into viable soil. And you're putting it in landfills, it's a waste. So yeah, you could mine it for minerals. You could mine it for wasted metals that were thrown away. Glass is literally almost 100% recyclable. Glass recycling works, but there's not as much call for glass anymore because plastic has replaced it, because it's lighter, cheaper. It's cheaper to make new plastic than it is to recycle glass. I think I talked about all that in the video. It's just a damn shame. We've been lied to. That was my big emphasis in that one. Lied to for over 50 years by all the governments of the world, and by the plastic industry lying to us for more than 5 decades about recycling and guilting people, making them think, oh yeah, you got to recycle to save the earth. You shouldn't be making all this shit in the first place. Glass is heavier and more fragile. And that was the trade-off. It'd be lighter to ship, less likely to break. But the plastic, it's contaminated. You're not going to have water in a glass bottle that's going to go bad, but water in a plastic bottle will go bad because the water will slowly break down the chemicals in the plastic over time, and then you're going to drink that. Nash says solar is good for off-grid independence. Yeah, if it's just solar panels on your home, that's one thing. But when you've got a big solar farm and it can't, a massive solar farm, and it can't produce enough electricity for a neighborhood, you've got a problem. And that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. But again, here, back to the story, China is in more trouble than we thought because the chemicals that they need, the liquefied natural gases that they need for their plastics manufacturing, which is what, 90% of their industry over there, they import all of it from the United States because we're the only country that makes it, apparently, which I'm shocked. I'm shocked. It's like, you would think they would start producing their own gases so that they could be independent of other countries. That's the smart move. So if we stop sending it to them, they're screwed. And again, this is how we got China the first time when Trump was president the first time around, and he cut them off from those gases for 400 days until they knuckled under and said, okay, boss, whatever you want. Whatever you want, we give up. Nature Nerd says we could have very cheap energy if we hooked up methane pipes in landfills. They are all ready for a few power plants doing this. They used to burn that off for independent power, the methane, but we were stopped from doing that. I think during the Obama administration, if I remember correctly. If I remember that correctly. And, if somebody knows different, go ahead and tell me in the comments section. Because I can't remember everything. I try. But you know how it is. You know how it is. By the way, don't know if you've seen this. This is breaking news. Oh, hey, Granny Smith. Granny Smith has taken up residence in the chair behind me, for those of you who can see. Getting comfortable there. Harvey Weinstein is on his way back to court. I think he'll be going to court today, actually. I think their retrial starts today. JJ says, I think the U.S. refines a lot more petroleum than anyone else, hence being a major supplier of plastic-making chemicals. Yeah, correct. And Tuck says Obama and Biden were very busy setting us up to fail. I agree. And one more here. Imagine, says, I heard that Chinese companies send ships to take the plastic away for a price, of course, and when they get out in the ocean, throw it overboard, which is why so much plastic is at sea. Is that true? I wouldn't be surprised. I've heard of countries like China dumping a lot of their waste, plastic waste, in near Indonesia and the Philippines, and those countries have a lot of conflict with China as a result of that. So there might be a lot of truth to that. So here, USA Today, Harvey Weinstein rape retrial begins with opening statements in New York. Here we go again. Harvey Weinstein's retrial on rape and sexual assault charges is set to begin Wednesday. The retrial comes before a Manhattan jury a year after New York's highest state appeals court overturned the disgraced movie mogul's conviction. Weinstein, who's now 73, faces 1 rape count and 2 criminal sexual act counts. The Oscar winner, one of Hollywood's most powerful producers, has pleaded not guilty and denied ever assaulting anyone. At the center of the retrial are 3 women with two alleging Weinstein forcibly performed sex on them, oral, in 2006, and another who claims that he had raped her in 2013. Retrial begins April 15th with jury selection, or began with jury selection April 15th. It says the legal redo, a proceeding that will largely mimic Weinstein's original state trial, is expected to last 6 weeks. Weinstein, who is experiencing a variety of health problems, has been brought into the courtroom as of late in a wheelchair. He's been in a wheelchair, I think, in all of the trials. What's interesting about this particular trial, and I don't know if it says it in here, it's going to be a female-heavy jury. So the jury's packed. He's going to get screwed this time. Peter says he didn't get a fair trial last time due to procedures. He's still guilty, but must have a fair trial. He's not going to get a fair trial with a mostly female jury box because they're just going to assume he's guilty. Plus, everybody thinks he is anyways. And I love how they're sure he's guilty, but we got to go through the motion to pretend like we have a justice system. Yeah, let's waste millions in taxpayer dollars to bring this guy to court again so that we can act like the scales of justice can't be tipped, basically. I don't know if it mentions in this article that it's almost all female. It says his original trial conviction was a capstone moment for the Me Too movement, which saw women in the entertainment industry emerge with claims of misconduct perpetrated by powerful men in media, politics, and other spheres, which we all knew about. If you remember, Bette Midler, way back on the Carson show, told a story about Weinstein trying to trap her in a bathroom. You can find that video clip on YouTube. Look up Bette Midler, Johnny Carson, Weinstein on YouTube, and you'll find it. That him and another guy tried to corner her in a bathroom, and that she got out, and she told the whole story on the Carson show, just to get the word out. But yeah, we wait all the way until now, when the guy is so old and decrepit that he probably doesn't even know he's in court. It's kind of like when they did it to Cosby. I'm like, is there a point now? Guy doesn't even know where he is. He's blind. He can't walk. JJ wants to know if he's being tried on the same charges. Hold on, I'm having a problem here. Here we go. I thought one couldn't be retried on the same charges once the issue has been resolved in court. Yeah, yeah, you can find a way to make it work. Kind of like how O.J. Simpson was found innocent, but then they just find another associated charge and then found him guilty on that. There's ways around it. They tell you that, but all they have to do is call it something else, and they can bring you back into court. They can bring you back into court. Luke Man says he'll probably just get house arrest. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen. I mean, they put Cosby in jail, and he was in a wheelchair and blind, just to show that they would do it. Just to show that they would do it. Monkey says, from watching a lawyer tuber that's local to my area, the pretrial for a different case where a college student clearly murdered 4 people in a college fraternity house and fled to Washington State. And basically, lawyers are advertising themselves for others to look at for getting a lawyer. Okay. So we're going to get ready to talk a little bit about colleges and universities here. Colleges and universities and all of the money that they're not going to get anymore. The Guardian, Harvard sues Trump administration over efforts to gain control of academic decision making. So this lawsuit's going to go nowhere, by the way. Harvard University has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration alleging it is trying to gain control of academic decision making of Harvard. The university is fighting back against the administration's threat to review about $9 billion in federal funding after Harvard officials refused to comply with a list of demands that included appointing an outside overseer to ensure that the viewpoints being taught at the university were diverse. Harvard is specifically looking to halt a freeze on $2.2 billion in grants. The lawsuit comes as the Trump administration has sought to force changes at multiple Ivy League institutions after months of student activism centered around the war in Gaza. The administration has painted the campus protests as anti-American and the institutions as liberal and anti-Semitic, which Harvard President Alan Garber refutes. It says taxpayer funds are a privilege and Harvard fails to meet the basic conditions required to access that privilege, says Fields, who is a spokesperson from the White House. In a letter announcing the university's decision to reject Trump's demands, Garber wrote, "No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue." That is, as long as you agree with it. See, the problem here is that's real cute for Garber, from the dean from the Harvard University. Is that the dean? Here's the problem. I'm going to read his quote again. "No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue." You didn't have a problem with it when you were forced into it by the Biden administration, when they were championing DEI, and they told you hire people like this, and they told you teach things like this, and you went along with it to get that big check. And now the Trump administration says, no, we're not doing that anymore. If you are doing it, then we're not going to give you the tax money. And now you want to sue. You didn't mind a government telling you or dictating to you, as you quoted, what you can teach. You didn't mind them telling you who you could admit, and you didn't mind them telling you who they could hire when you were on the same page with the executive branch during the Biden administration. But now that there's a new sheriff in town, you don't like it. Then you want to sue to get money that you're actually not entitled to anyways, since that $9 billion is in grants from taxpayers, and it's the government's privilege whether they give it to you or not. All the government said was, if you want to keep getting it, we have a new set of rules. Apparently, you don't need it that much. Nature Nerd says the U.S. justice system rely on random citizens that don't want to be there, untainted in the justice system since it's not their job. And Brian says suing is for stupid Democrats, apparently. JJ says, I take issue with that statement by the university official, especially if their actions run foul of discrimination laws. Yeah, but again, they didn't mind. They didn't mind when it was in their favor. When the executive branch rolled along and said, hey, we want to pay you to make DEI hires. We want to pay you to teach DEI classes. And Harvard was like, okay, well, show me the money. Now that that's been stopped, you have a problem with it. Now you have a problem with government telling you what to do. Government's making a suggestion. The tax money is a privilege, just like spokesperson Harrison Fields quoted. He says, "Gravy train of federal assistance to institutions like Harvard is coming to an end." And I don't like the idea that any of these institutions are getting government funding like that in the first place. The idea that these institutions claim to be nonprofit, Harvard, whether it's an Ivy League, whether it's a university or a college, they are not nonprofit. These people are making money. And they get so much extra money, they think they can just do whatever the hell they want. They get grants from foreign governments that they shouldn't be receiving. They get grants from our government, which they shouldn't be receiving. And they got so much money, they got a big head. They got a big head. And now that that money's not coming in anymore, you got a problem. You didn't need the money in the first place. Your tuition was enough. You took advantage. Peter says modern universities are a waste of time, and I have a PhD and multiple MSCs, master's degrees. I've got a college degree, and it's pointless. It's pointless. Business Insider tying in with that. Priscilla Chan's tuition-free school that championed DEI is closing after 10 years. And of course, Priscilla Chan is Mark Zuckerberg's wife. There she is, looking more masculine than him. That's a terrible dress. I mean, I get the euphemism. She's got flower breast ornaments, and he's wearing a dragonfly pin, I guess indicating male and female. But anyways, California school confounded by Mark Zuckerberg's wife, Priscilla Chan, that championed DEI value, is closing next year after a decade. The primary school, a tuition-free private school with locations in East Palo Alto and East Bay, California, is shutting the doors at the end of the 2025-26 school year. It announced on its website it was confounded by Chan and Meredith Liu, an educator, and opened its first location in 2016. Liu died in 2023. The school said it made the decision to close after much deliberation. This was a difficult decision, and we are committed to ensuring a thoughtful and supportive transition for students and families over the next year. The school has served hundreds of students, from those as young as 1 year up to middle school age pupils. The Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Chan and Zuckerberg's science-focused philanthropic organization, plans to spend $50 million over the next few years in the school's communities to support the transition, including through 529 education savings plans for students and transition specialists for families, social workers. It's more waste of money. I remember when Zuckerberg gave 28 million, 20 something million to public schools in New Jersey, and they wasted all of the money. I remember reading the article years ago. They spent all that money on committees to decide what to do with the money until there wasn't any. And then opened up another committee to investigate what the hell happened to the money in the first place. But yeah, now that the executive branch is no longer supporting DEI, suddenly they want to walk back from it to the point where they're closing the schools down, which are very DEI oriented. And teaching from children as young as 1, DEI study schools, primary schools, that's scary. That's scary. Very scary. I'm glad they're shutting it down, although they're still throwing their money at public schools. It's a waste. It's an absolute waste. And they want to open up their own school, and they make it DEI centric. But now that Meta and Zuckerberg want to move away from that because they see the change in the wind, as it were. They're going as far as closing the school down. It probably helps that they're not going to get any federal funding anymore, too. Now they want to get away from it. Okay, you go ahead and do that while these schools continue to piss and moan that they can't get their federal tax money that, frankly, they're not entitled to in the first place. NBC News article, over 150 college presidents sign a letter rebuking government overreach. More than 150 universities and colleges, college president co-signed a letter on Tuesday condemning the Trump administration's recent efforts to dictate the policies of private higher education institutions in exchange for federal funding. In recent weeks, the Trump administration has paused billions of dollars in federal grants to several of the nation's most prestigious universities, including Harvard, Columbia, and Princeton, in an attempt to get the universities to change their admissions processes and penalize student protesters. The letter signatories range from large public universities to small liberal arts schools and include each of the Ivy League schools except for Columbia University in Dartmouth. Quote, as leaders of America's colleges, universities, and scholarly societies, we speak with one voice against the unprecedented government overreach and political interference now endangering America's higher education, according to the letter. We are open to constructive reform and do not oppose legitimate government oversight, the letter continues. However, we must oppose undue government intrusion in the lives of those who learn, live, and work on our campuses. We will always seek effective and fair financial practices, but we must reject the coercive use of public research funding. Again, you're complaining about government overreach, but you didn't have a problem with it when that government overreach was telling you to implement DEI policies in order to get the funding. Now you got a problem. Didn't bother you before because the people who were running these colleges and universities were already very woke. So when the Biden administration rolled along and said, hey, we'll give you X number of additional dollars to implement deliberately DEI policies and hire DEI people, because they had DEI departments in these facilities, which is a new thing or was a new thing. Oh, they were happy. They were happy because they were woke anyway. Now the government says, we're not doing that anymore. You're shitting your pants. Tough. Too bad. Too bad. You shouldn't have been getting that tax money in the first place. I don't think the government should be funding any of these colleges or universities. Tuck says Harvard is on the cloud pivot in every possible way, pretty much. So 150 colleges and universities across the country penned a useless letter whining about money they're not entitled to over programs that they shouldn't be teaching. Does that about sum it up? Does that about sum it up? Does that make sense? I think that hits the nail on the head. I think that hits the nail on the head. Cut them off. I don't think we should be funding them at all. And I don't think they should be allowed to take donations from foreign countries, from other governments either, which is how we ended up with all the Gaza protests at these colleges and universities in the first place. That's why it was allowed to go on. We already read those articles. We read those articles last year that money was pouring in, billions from Saudi Arabia and from Iran and from Iraq and these other places that have no business dictating policy on college campuses. They didn't complain about that money. So here you go. Here's your debt clock for today, with Doge currently at $351 billion in projected savings. And tariff earnings are currently at $660 billion. I'd like to see those numbers increase tenfold as we get ready to sign off here. Granny Smith still in the background. There she is, laying in the chair, looking comfortable. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you again tomorrow.